Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for liking my videos. Now let's go on that code.org platform, and so we guys were doing this teacher student app in the previous lecture, right? So this is online coding class 6, in which we'll continue doing this teacher student app. So we were on this part. Till now, we have learned that how can we design this screen. Then we learned about how can we design this teacher's panel, and also how this teacher can send the question which she's going to write down over here, just on a single click. Just by hitting this send button, she can send the question on the students panel. So when she'll hit this button, automatically a table with name questions is going to get created on the data browser connected to this app, in which the question will get saved. And finally, with the help of this code which we have defined for this label box, the ID of which is good get question, which is there on the students panel. Fine, when the student will hit this label box, this is a code which is going to get executed, and it will fetch the records from the questions named table, and whatever the question teacher has given the student for to attempt, so he'll be able to see the question getting reflected over here right in the board, right? So now we are going to define the code for this submit button over here, with which this student, fine, will be able to submit his response for the question given by the teacher. So for doing that, I'm going to define this on even block. First, let's put it right in the bottom, and the ID of this button is submit. So we need to select submit from this first drop down. Here I go. So when the student will hit this submit button, so before hitting the submit button, he need to write down his name over here, and he need to write down the answer of that question over here in this text area. Fine. Now when he will hit the submit button, I would again like to get a table created on the data browser. Fine. And in that table, I would like three things to get stored. First is this question, which is going to get reflected on the student's panel when the student will hit this label box over here. Second is the name of the student, and the third is the answer with which he is going to reply to that question given by the teacher. Fine. So for doing that, we need to convert it into text-based coding. Let me enlarge the size of this window I'm working on, so that you can the text can be more visible to you guys, this coding text. Fine, and let's now come down over here in this data part and select this create record block. So with this, you can create a table like structure on the data browser. Fine. So now when the student will hit this submit button, automatically I would like a table with name answers to get created on the data browser connected to this app, in which I would like to save three different things. One is the question given by the teacher. Second thing is the answer with which the student is going to reply to the question. Fine. And then the name of the student. Fine. So where can we get the input for this field, the ID of which is questions? So we can get it very easily from this label box over here, right? So the ID of this label box is get question. I am going to copy that ID from here, and let's define it in between these two double inverted commas inside this get text circular brackets. Fine. Now I am going to copy this whole code from here, and let's put it over here. Okay, now where can we get the answer from? We can get it from this text area, right? So the ID of this text area is answer. Let's replace this get question with answer. Fine. Okay, and then where can we get the ID or the value of this name field? We can get it easily from this component over here, right? So let's first select get text from this IntelliSense window. Okay, now in between these two double inverted commas, I am going to write down the ID of this input box. So it is student name. I am on the design panel right now. I'm done with copying the ID of this text box. Let's come back on the coding panel and place it over here. Fine. So now this table is going to get created when the student will hit the submit button. Fine. Now I would like the student to hear a notification sound also from the background. So for doing that, we can make use of this play sound block. Remember this thing, whenever we are adding this play sound block to any on-even block, it means that we are trying to make the app more interactive and more interesting for the user to work on. Fine, let's select some sound from the sounds library. So I can make use of, I think this is good. Yeah, this one is good. So let's make use of this. So you just have to hit this choose button after selecting the relevant sound from the sounds library, and automatically you'll see the required changes over here in this URL part. Fine. Okay, now this table named answers is going to get created over here on the data browser. Now this next thing that I would like to define the code for is this button over here, the ID of which is get answer. How can this teacher get the answer with which the student has replied to the question given by her? So she just have to hit this button, and I would like to define the code of this button in such a way that, you know, whatever answer the student has replied with to the question, that answer and the student's name will be visible, should be visible to the teacher over here in these two fields. So the student name should be visible to the teacher over here in this label box, and the answer given by the student should be visible to the teacher in this text area. So for doing that, we can again come up in this UI controls section of the toolbox, and let's make use of this uneven block and drop it over here in bottom. Okay, now in the first drop down, I'm going to select the ID of this button. The ID of this button is get answer. So we need to select this one from here. Let's convert it into text-based coding. Fine. And now when the teacher will hit this get answer, what should happen? So I would like whatever records are there in this answers named table, I can fetch them, and I would like them to get reflected over here in these two fields. Now, you know, if suppose a teacher has given, you know, let's say 2 or more questions, so we need to put a check on the question part also, because we would like to fetch the answer for that question which the teacher is going to write down over here, or you can say which is there in this text area on the teacher's panel. Fine. So how can we define such a code? Let's check it out. So first of all, I'm going to make use of this read records block, of course. Why? Because read records block is used for fetching the records from a table present on the data browser connected to the app. Okay, now we are trying to fetch the records from which table? It's from the answers table. So we need to replace this my table with answers. And how can we fetch the records from this answers named table which are present for this question which is there on the teacher's panel? So, you know, in this answers named table, the questions are getting saved in this field, the ID of which is questions. So we can put a check on this field. How can we do that? We just have to write down the name of the field over here in which the questions are getting saved in this answers named table, and we can fetch the value of this questions named column from this text area which is there on the teacher's panel. Okay, so the ID of this is question. Let's put it over here. Okay, now I would like to set the text for two things, this label box and for this answer field. Let's do that quickly. So we can make use of this set text property for setting the text of these two components. Now I would like to set the text of this component the ID of which is student. So it is student in small, everything is small. And from where can I get the value of this for this component named student? So we can get it from the table. Okay, from which column? So there is a column named name that we have defined over here for storing the name of the student. Fine, so let's put it over here. Records I is generally used when we want to pull the records with the help of this records named variable from a particular table. Remember this thing. Okay, now I'm going to copy this whole code and let's paste it over here. Now the idea of this component is answer. So in this, I would like the answer to get reflected with whatever answer the student has replied to this question given by the teacher. I would like that to get reflected over here. So where are the answers getting saved? So they are getting saved in this column named answer. Let's replace this name with answer. Okay, so I'm done with defining the required code. Now let's make it more interactive by adding a sound to this uneven block. So I'm going to come down over here and let's make use of this play speech block, and I'm putting it over here. And let's replace the text which is there in this play speech block by default by something like here is the response of the student. Fine. So the teacher is going to hear something like this from the background. Now let's run this app and check out whether the code that we have defined over here is it going to give us the desired output or not. So I'm going to run it on two different windows. On the first window you will be accessing the teacher's app, and on the second window we will be accessing the student's app. Fine, so let me just reduce the size of this window so that everything can be more visible to you guys. And let's open a new second browser on which we will be accessing the students panel. At present on this data browser which is connected to this app, only this table named questions is there. Fine, and we have this question inside this table which is saying what is the capital of Delhi. That is the only thing we have got on the data browser right now. Okay, so it is taking a little bit of time. Fine. Now I am going to let's enter teacher over here and teacher in this field too. Okay. So we are done with accessing the teacher's app on this app. Let's access the student app, student panel on this device.
Hello student. Your dashboard is ready.
Great. Now I'm going to give a question to this student. So let's do that. What is the capital of Gujarat? Fine. So this is the question which I would like this student to attempt. So let's hit the send button.
You successfully sent the question.
Okay, I'm done with sending the question. Let's first check whether this question is getting reflected in that questions named table or not. So as you can see, this question is getting reflected over here. Okay, and let's come back on this data browser. So there is only one table present on the data browser currently. Let's come on this students panel and hit this label box over here. Okay, so the question is visible to us. Now I'm going to write down my own name over here, Gaurav Jain, and let's answer this question. So Gandhi Nagar is the capital of Gujarat. Fine. Now I'm going to hit the submit button. Let's see what is going to happen. Okay. So I'm done with submitting my response. So as you can see, a new table with name answers has got created over here. And let's see what do we have inside this table. So we have this question, then the answer with which we reply to this question, and my name is also getting reflected over here. Let's now check out whether this teacher will be able to receive the answer with which I have replied to this question or not. So for that she need to hit this submit get the answer button over here.
Here is the response of the student.
Great. So the name is also coming over here and I'm able to see the answer too. Fine. Now, how if suppose there are 3 or 4 students, okay, who have attempted this question. Now, how this teacher can check the answers of all those 3 or 4 students? Fine. So for that, what we can do, we can define the code for these 2 buttons in such a way that, on hitting this button, we can navigate in between the answers which the different students who have attempted this question. We can check, we can check the answers of different students who have attempted this question. So this is going to be the previous button and this is going to be the next button. Let's define the code for these 2 buttons. So I'm closing these 2 windows. Let's come back on this coding panel, and now right in the bottom I'm going to define the code for this button first. So whenever you are coding the next and previous button, so the best way for defining the code properly is by making use of a counter variable. Remember to use a counter variable whenever you are coding the next and previous button. Fine. So how can you declare a variable on this JavaScript based platform? This is the keyword with which you can declare a variable, var. Okay, and then you can write down the name of the variable, whatever variable you want to use, you can make use of that. So for now I'm making use of x. Okay, then if you want to initialize it with some value, so how can you do that? You can make use of this assignment operator and then you can put a 0. Fine. So that's how you can declare a variable as well as initialize it with a value in one go. Fine. Now let's come down and right in the bottom let's define this uneven block. So when the user will hit this next name button, the ID of this button is next name. I would like, where is that next name? Let's choose that first. This is the one. See, if I'll come on this data browser, so this is the field for which we have defined the code, but for this field we haven't defined any code in the workspace of coding panel. Okay, so this, as I've told you earlier also in the previous online classes, that this is the column which gets automatically generated for every row that gets created in a particular table that is there on the data browser. Similarly, if you'll come inside this answers name table, you will be able to see this one getting reflected over here. Fine. Now if you'll create one more record, automatically another ID, okay, is going to get generated for that particular row. Fine. So these are automatically generating IDs. Let's come back on this coding panel now. So I'm going to make use of this X for fetching the IDs. Okay, and whatever data is there inside the table named answers, okay, against that ID I would like to fetch that and I would like that to get reflected over here. That's how I am going to code this button now. Okay, so let's make use of this line of code, x is equals to x plus 1. So when the user will hit this next name button, the value of x is going to get incremented by 1. Now why I have initialized this x with 0? It's because the IDs are starting with this 1. They are not starting from 0, they are starting from 1. Okay, so that's the reason when the user will hit this next button, so the value of x will become 1 first, right? Now let's make use of this read records block. Instead of copying it from here, I am going to copy this whole code. Okay, and I am placing it over here. Now we are reading the records from this answers named table for this question, right? Now how can we match this ID part? So for doing that, what we can do, we can make use of this if loop, and we can place it inside this for loop like this. So if the ID part records I dot id, if this id part matches with the value of x, so I would like to fetch the information for these two fields which are present against this id for this question in this table, right? Okay, so we are done with defining the code, required code for this button over here. Now let's eliminate this thing, and I'm going to copy this whole code and paste it over here. Now let's make use of this code for defining the required things in this workspace for this button, the ID of which is prev name. So the only thing that you have to do is you need to change the ID part of this onEven block from this next name to prev name. And when the user will hit this prev name named button, I would like the value of x to go down by 1. Okay, so that's how you can do it. Fine, this is the only change that you have to make in this code for this prev name button. Now I am going to run this app one more time, and let's see whether these things are going to give us the correct output or not. So let's hit the share button and make use of this link for running the code. So this time I'm going to run the code on 4 different browsers. On the first one, I'm going to access the teachers panel, and on rest of the 3 I am going to access the students panel. So this one is the first one, and let's hit this run button. So teachers panel, I'm going to make use of this mobile simulator for accessing the same, and for accessing the students panel I am going to make use of these 3 devices. So you guys have to assume as if I'm working on right now 4 different devices. Fine. Okay, so this is how all the application works. First of all, the data gets saved in a server, and then the required information is pulled up from that server on different devices. Okay, let's make use of this teacher for accessing the teachers panel on this mobile simulator.
Hello, teacher.
Okay.
Your dashboard is ready.
Let's now access the students panel on these 3
Hello, student. Your
browsers.
dashboard is ready. Hello, student.
And do like
Your
this
dashboard
lecture.
is ready.
Do subscribe to the channel and also share the link of this video
Hello, student.
in your group so
Your
that more and more
dashboard is
students
ready.
can come and join the channel and enjoy these free online coding classes. Okay, so let's give a question to these 3 students. Let's make use of this teachers panel for doing the same. What comes after May? Okay, let's hit this send button.
You successfully sent the
Okay,
question.
so I'm done with sending the question to all the 3 students, and as you can see in this questions name table, this question is getting reflected what I've typed over here. Okay, let's now come on this first student's device and hit this label box. Okay, so the question is visible to me. Here also it is visible to me, and on this board also the question is visible to me, right? Now I'm going to come on this first student's device and let's write down a name over here. So Arpit, and what comes after me? June comes after me. Fine, let's hit the submit button. Okay, so Arpit is done with submitting his response, right? Let's come on this second device, and here I am writing Binny. So I don't know. Let's suppose he doesn't know the answer of this question. So Binny is also done with submitting the response for this question broadcasted by the teacher, and Navy Jen. So June comes after May, or let it be June. Okay, let's hit the submit button. Okay, so all three of them are done with submitting the response for this question given by the teacher. Let's come on this teacher's panel, see whether she'll be able to fetch the required information on her panel or not. First of all, I would like to show you what all things we have in this answers named table. So as you can see, Arpit's, Binny's and Nivi's answers are there, and the question is also getting reflected over here in this answers named table. Let's let this get the answer first and see what's going to happen.
Here is the response of the student.
Okay, so I'm able to see Nivi's answer. Why is it so? Just because Nivi is the one who submitted her response at the end. Okay, after Arpit and Binny. So that is the reason her name and this answer is getting reflected over here. Now let's make use of these two buttons and see what's gonna happen. Okay, I'm able to fetch the answer with which Arpit has responded to this question. Binny's answer is also getting reflected over here. Okay, again Nivi's answer is getting reflected on this teacher's panel. Let's make use of this previous button and see what's gonna happen. Okay, so I'm going back now, right? So that's how you can navigate in between the responses the students have submitted for the question broadcasted by the teacher. Okay, so that's how you can code these two buttons present on the teacher's panel. So this is it for this lecture. The rest, the remaining part we are going to do in the next class. Now you guys can go ahead and ask whatever you want to ask related to whatever we have learned in this lecture. Okay, have you put to, who is this? Magic by New? Yes, semicolon. Why we place semicolon after every line of code? It's because it tells the compiler of the platform to terminate the line and go on the next line. That is the reason we put semicolon after every line of code. Shubhangi, Coding in Magical World, thank you very much for appreciating my work. Cause what are we going to do next class? Dear, if you are a subscriber of my channel, definitely you're going to get a notification of the next live online class that I will be taking on my channel. So at that time, you'll come to know about what we are going to do next. Yes, is there any query? Is there anything you are not able to understand? So you guys are most welcome to ask me the same. And keep liking the videos and keep sharing the videos in your groups so that more and more students can come and join the channel. Okay, it will definitely help those who are in need okay, who want to learn coding free of cost and they are searching for some good channel on YouTube. Okay, so I hope everything is clear to you guys. In case you come across any issue while practicing these things that we discussed in today's lecture, you guys can make use of the comment section. Fine, just write down your queries over there and I will try to sort it out as soon as possible. Thank you very much for joining me in this lecture. Have a great day. Bye bye.